Hi guys, welcome or welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. So greatly appreciate it. Truly is. So before we start, let me give you my usual disclaimer that this video is for educational purposes only. Please do not take what I say as fact. Please always do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Lastly, there are pictures and videos in this story that you may find disturbing. So if you think it's going to be too much for you, I would click off and come back for a different video. I want you guys to take care of yourselves first and foremost. But if you want to stay, I appreciate you, and let's get started, okay? When I first started coming across these stories, I didn't realize that there are so many of them. There's a lot of them. And I truthfully thought at first, like, oh my God, this is terrible. Who would even think of doing something like this? But it's actually very common. They're actually on the rise. It's crazy. In 2016, there were over 600 reported attacks in the UK, and from 2011 to 2016, there were 1,464 reports in London alone. Between 1999 and 2013, 3,512 Bangladesh people were attacked. In India, attacks were on an all-time high, with 250 to 300 being reported every single year, even though authorities believe that the actual number is more into like the thousands. The severity of the damage depends on the concentration of the acid and how long it's on the skin before it's washed away. The acid can rapidly eat away at skin, the layer of fat beneath the skin, and in some cases, even the bone. Eyelids and lips can be destroyed, and the nose and ears severely damaged. The skull can be partially disformed. Ear cartilage can be destroyed, and deafness can occur. Eyelids can be burned off, leaving the eyes extremely dry and leading to blindness. The nose can become shrunken and deformed. The mouth can be shrunken and narrow and can lose its full range of motion. The lips can be destroyed, exposing the teeth and making talking and eating extremely difficult. And permanent scarring. These victims can also run the risk of sepsis, kidney failure, skin depigmentation, and even death. Not to mention the social, psychological, and economical long-term effects that it can have on somebody. Nephea Ikram, Long Island, New York, March 17th, 2021. 22-year-old Hofstra University student Nephea Ikram was studying to become a doctor. She had just arrived home from her shift at CVS at around 8:30 p.m. and she began walking inside her home. That's when a stranger runs up behind her and throws battery acid all over her, leaving burns on her face, neck, eyes, and hands. The incident was caught on a neighbor's surveillance camera. Nephea is a Muslim, although it is not believed that this attack was racially motivated. Nephea went through numerous surgeries in the first 2 weeks after her attack. She has had her right eye rebuilt, has had her esophagus dilated every 2 weeks, and was unable to eat because her esophagus lost its flexibility, making it impossible to swallow even the smallest of pills. She went blind in her left eye after the acid dissolved the contact onto her eye. Nephea believes that she will have to undergo at least 25 plastic surgeries as a result of this attack. The Ikram family claimed that Nassau County Police did not take the attack seriously, accused her of lying and withholding information, and that they majorly dropped the ball on this case. If this is accurate, then shame on you, Nassau County. And I hope this family drags you through the mud as a result of it. I do. I truly do. And as of today, July 23rd, 2022, nobody has been arrested.
Nightmares are understandable. 22-year-old Nephea Ikram is soft-spoken, but determined despite the pain she's battled since last March 17th. That day, she was walking home in Elmont, and surveillance video captured a tall man in a hoodie running up behind her and throwing a liquid in her face.
I can't understand what level of hatred or jealousy or whatever it is that provoked this person to do this to me.
The attack left her blind in her right eye, with scars across her face, forearms, and wrists.
I have so many surgical procedures coming up.
She cannot even lift her arms. I have to shower her, dress her.
Oh God, we are hurt. We are grieved.
The religious Muslim family doesn't believe the attack was racially or religiously motivated. But Nephea and her father don't think that Nassau County Police have worked her case hard enough.
So they really take this case very slow, and they did not really make us feel that they are really doing anything. So please help us to find that animal. So please, my daughter, she's suffering every single day.
June 21st, 2017, 21-year-old aspiring model Rasham Khan was out for the night celebrating her 21st birthday with her cousin, 37-year-old Jamil Mukhtar, in Beckton, East London. A verbal altercation happened between Jamil and John Tomlin on the pavement. I guess they were walking and they had an argument. Just a verbal argument, but whatever. The cousins walk away. The cousins get into their car. They begin to drive off. This is when Tomlin runs up to their car and throws acid inside the passenger's window. Rasham begins screaming and she tries to drive away, but she can't because she's blocked by parked cars. That's when Tomlin comes running up and throws even more acid on Jamil Mukhtar and takes off. The attack was thankfully caught on CCTV. Jamil, who was temporarily blinded, crashes the car. He says that the liquid initially felt cold and then it started to burn, melting through his skin, clothes, and shoes. He drags his cousin out of the passenger seat and begins ripping off her burning clothes and running from house to house, knocking on doors, begging for water to wash the acid off. Good Samaritans get the cousins to the hospital, but by the time they arrive, they've both suffered life-changing injuries. Jamil is put into a medically induced coma for emergency treatment. When he wakes up, he finds himself deaf in one ear, damage to his right ear, and extensive burns to his upper body, arms, legs, back, neck, and face. Jamil says that he remains in continuous pain from the burn and the skin grafts, along with physical and mental toll that it has taken on him. He says that he's unable to walk, eat, sleep, or go to the bathroom on his own. He goes on to say that he can't be around anybody because he's too embarrassed to talk to anyone. It's gotten so bad that he doesn't even leave his house anymore, and he cannot stand to look at himself in the mirror. Rashim suffered numerous burns that required skin grafts and has left permanent scars on her legs and face. 25-year-old John Tomlin was charged with 2 counts of grievous bodily harm and sentenced to 16 years in prison for each victim to run concurrently. He was then ordered to serve another 4-year monitored probation. He will be eligible for parole after serving a minimum of 2/3 of his sentence. April 17th, 2017. About 600 people went to a club called Mangles in London Field for a fun night of drinking and dancing. 22-year-old Lauren Trent and her best friend, 22-year-old Sophie Hall, decided to go out that night for Lauren's 22nd birthday. 23-year-old Phoebe Gorjo was a fashion student in 2017. 22-year-old Aussie model Isabella Frazier was enjoying the night out with her sister, 21-year-old Prue Frazier. Another person at the bar that night was 25-year-old Arthur Collins. Colin is seen on CCTV entering the bar about 9 p.m. and then getting into an argument with a group of men 4 hours later. Collins had just finished serving a 6-month sentence after punching a man outside of a nightclub over an argument and leaving the man needing 20 stitches. Along with this, Collins has 5 previous convictions dating back to 2008 for public order defenses, criminal damage, driving with a suspended license, and possession of the white stuff that goes up your nose. Collins does not deny throwing the acid that evening, but he claims he had very good reasons for doing so, claiming that he walked past men who were arguing and overheard them talking about putting a liquid date R-word drug into women's drinks. That's when the fight starts because he says that he was raised better than that. So he took the bottle, claiming he didn't know that it was acid, claiming he thought that it was the liquid R-word stuff. And he throws the liquid at the men once and then twice more in rapid succession. This story would very quickly fall apart, though, when prosecution finds text messages from Collins to his sister 10 days prior to this, telling her to tell their mom to ignore the hand wash in his car acid. After Collins threw the liquid, clubgoers quickly fell to the floor, describing the burning smell and watching their skin blister immediately and having to rub ice on it. They go on to say that everyone began screaming, shouting, and running. Lauren Trent described it as a war zone, and her best friend Sophie believed that she was part of a terror attack. Lauren was hit on the neck and chest. She said she runs upstairs to the bathroom, and that's where she finds her best friend Sophie screaming in pain. She had been hit on her face, upper body, shoulder, and side. The acid was burning her clothes, and the clothes were melting to her skin. 22-year-old Aussie model Isabella Frazier was spending the night out with her sister Prue. She says that she felt something on her arm, and then it began to burn. The back of her dress melted onto her back, and there was a big hole in the dress. 21-year-old Prue initially thought she was caught in an explosion. She was in severe pain. She felt something wet on her arm and then says it began to burn.
Yeah, it's been quite a terrific 24 hours. Well, basically we're at a club in East London. I never really go to East London. It's the first time I actually had been out there. And basically we were there for about an hour and we were standing down like near the second bar. And anyway, so someone was like, oh, the fight's about to break out. So like everyone was like going to one side, and like split second later I was like thrown over this fence, and like I felt something on my arm, and I was like, what is that? Like it's burning. Anyway, so pretty much, and then someone said, it's acid, like you've been thrown acid, acid's been thrown on everyone. Everyone was crying, like it was just horrific. Like just the thought of it now, I was like, oh, it's like quite stressful. But anyway, yeah, so that's basically what's happened. And
Isabella, what's the extent of your injuries?
Well, they could be worse. They're very painful, but I didn't get it on the face or anything like other people did in the eye, and apparently some people can't see, which is really bad. But yeah, I just have some burns on my arm and on my back as well, and my shirt actually that I was wearing, this one here, actually stuck to my skin, so I had to get it picked off my skin. Where is it?
Yuck.
Yeah, so the acid actually yeah.
Oh, that's
so it's
what
pretty
about
gross, but
what about the people around you? Did they get splattered in the face?
So yeah, the people around us were splashed with it. Yeah, so there was about 12 people, 12 known injuries, but a lot of our friends as well, they didn't actually go to hospital because they were guys, and they just thought, oh, whatever, like we'll be fine. But we've actually spoken to them and have encouraged them to go see someone because they're not sure what acid it was, so they're not exactly sure how to treat it or what's going to happen. So
Alan Collins and the friend that was with him that night were identified by CCTV and arrested a few days later. Collins didn't go down easy, though, and ended up being tased because of this. The charges against his friend were dropped, and Alan Collins was sentenced to 20 years in prison. In 2008, 24-year-old Katie Piper was a model and TV presenter. A man named David Lynch would come across her Facebook page and begin messaging her and asking her out on a date. The relationship would only last 2 weeks, though, because David was too pushy for Katie, along with being physically and emotionally abusive. And Katie ended things. But that's when the harassment from David goes into overdrive. He begins calling her nonstop and telling her that she cannot break up with him. 2 days after breaking up with him, David calls Katie and asks her to meet him outside just one more time, and then promises he will never bother her again. So Katie decides that it's probably a good idea to just appease him, go outside, see what he has to say, and then just never hear from him again. That's her mindset going into that. Katie agrees, and then David asks her what she's wearing. So I found this strange because if you're dating somebody, if you've met them quite a few times, you don't need to know what they're wearing, really, because you're going to recognize them. I feel like you would ask something like that if it was like a blind date or a first date. But I'm guessing it doesn't register for her right away because she answers the question and then she heads outside. When she gets outside, she notices a man walking towards her with his arms extended out with a coffee cup in his hand. So she assumes that the man is homeless. So this girl stops to open her purse to get money to give to this homeless man. That's when father of four, Stefan Sylvester, throws a cup containing sulfuric acid all over Katie's face, leaving her blind in her left eye and extremely disfigured. Katie has undergone more than 400 operations to reconstruct her face, with many features having to be built using other body parts. Okay. Her nose is grafted from her upper right rib. Her eyelids are grafted from her groin and cheeks. She underwent hair transplants to form eyebrows. Surgeons shaved her head and took a skin graft from her mid-back, then sewed a sheet of skin on the top of her head and past her chest, covering the area that was burned by the acid. On a brighter note, Katie would end up meeting a man named Richard James. Fun fact, Chris Martin of Coldplay is the one that hooks them up, which is pretty cool. They were both backstage at a Coldplay concert when Chris Martin asked if they were dating, to which they both replied, I don't know, maybe. The couple would have their first child, a little girl named Belle Elizabeth, in March of 2014. They would get engaged in December of 2014, get married in November of 2015, and welcome their second child, another little girl, named Penelope Diane, in December of 2017. This ending makes my heart happy, and I wish them a lifetime of happiness. As far as the two losers are concerned, boyfriend David Lynch was sentenced to 2 life sentences with a mandatory 16 years. Stefan, the man he hired, was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 6 years, and he was released from prison in 2018. December 2014. Andreas is working from home when he hears a knock at the door. He answers it believing it's a Christmas delivery. But on the other side of the door is 49-year-old painter David Phillips. David has driven 300 miles to the cul-de-sac where Andre lives, believing that he has SA'd a family member of his. Andreas says this is how it goes down. There's a knock at the door. He answers the door, and Phillips is standing 2 steps down, and he says, quote, "This is for you, mate." And then he throws the acid in an upright position, so it's on his face, but then it's also hitting the ceiling above him, and then it begins raining down on his back. He says the moment that he knew that it was acid was when he looked down and his shirt had disintegrated. It's crazy. His wife Pia is upstairs with the baby at the time when she hears him running through the house screaming to call an ambulance as he's going to the kitchen to douse himself in the face with water. His wife Pia says that there was some of the acid on the carpet, and when she stepped on it with her socks disintegrated just like her husband's shirt did. The couple's son had to be taken to the hospital because he was breathing in the fumes from the acid. Andreas was left blind in one eye and permanently scarred all over his face. It would later come out that Andreas was a victim of mistaken identity. David Phillips went to the wrong house by mistake. The father of four eventually admitted to police what he had done, and he was sentenced to life in prison. After that, a panel of 3 judges decided to drop his sentence down to 16 years with a minimum of 8 years before he's eligible for parole, with their reasoning being that David Phillips was not a danger to society. Really? This has infuriated a number of people because the truth of the matter is that if this was a knife attack, David Phillips would have gotten way more time than 8 years, and the permanent scars would be way less visible. There needs to be extremely harsh punishments for these attacks.
Knock on the door. Went and opened it as I would normally expecting it to be yet another courier delivering yet another parcel prior to Christmas. And instantly received a beaker of sulfuric acid to the face. Without this guy checking who I was, the only thing he said was, "This is for you, mate." Not having eyelids is probably the most torturous thing I've been through. You can't hide from the light. Can't shut your eyes, obviously. Sleeping is difficult. But also the risk of infection is a lot higher. Given how readily available corrosive substances are in our daily lives, anyone can get their hands on them. Not every person in the UK can get a gun. The majority of people can't. For that reason, I strongly believe that the sentencing for anyone who carries out any form of acid attack, whether their intended victim is injured badly or not, anyone who carries out an acid attack should serve a life sentence with a minimum term of 20 plus years.
If we go over the punishments that the attackers in this video alone were given, it is clear that the victims are the ones that are given a life sentence, and the attackers are the ones that were given a slap on the wrist. Nephea Ikram's attacker has never been caught. In fact, they didn't even take her seriously, according to her family. Cousins Rasham Khan and Jamil Mukhtar's attacker, John Tomlin, received 2 16-year sentences to run concurrently, but will be eligible for parole after 2/3 of his sentence. Best friends Lauren Trent and Sophie Hall, Phoebe, and sisters Prue and Isabella Frazier's attacker only received 20 years. Katie Piper's attacker, Stefan Silvestro, only received 6 years, and her ex that set it up received 2 life sentences with a minimum of 16 years. And Andreas Christopher's attacker, David Phillips, who had his life sentence dropped to 16 years with a minimum of 8 years. So this is not justice, in my opinion, by any means whatsoever. But on a brighter note, Andreas and his wife Pia went on to have another son together, and Andreas became the ambassador for the charity Face Forward, which helps victims of violent crimes. Okay, guys, if you're still here, thank you. I appreciate you so very much. I truly do. If you have not liked, subscribed, or commented yet, please consider doing so. It really helps me out, and it really means so much to me. It really would. If you have any case suggestions, please email me, harding527@yahoo.com. And until next time, I love you all and stay safe out there.